Dadine, I tweeted about your memoir. I sent family members text messages telling them that they needed to read it because, as I mentioned to you before we started filming, I could not put it down. And you mention in your book that one's life experiences are not for them to keep or hold on to, but to share with others. And so I wanted to know, why is it important for one to share their story with honesty and in a raw way, just like you did, as opposed to keeping it to themselves?
I feel like no matter where we come from, no matter what culture or religion, we're just human. And we have the same history. And if we're able to share what we went through, we realize that really somebody else somewhere is going through that. So you really help, what you do when you're sharing your own story, you're helping them to know that tomorrow is going to be okay. If I went through this and I survived and I'm okay, I can smile today, you're going to be okay too. So it's more about educating people what happened and so they can see a relevance. Absolutely. Yeah.
And creating this unique connection.
Yes, yes, absolutely.
Well, I want, in the beginning of your memoir, you say these words: "My country was once called the land of milk and honey, but overnight it has become a land of blood and sorrow." So for people unfamiliar with the unimaginable horror that took place in 1994 in Rwanda and why it happened, how do you explain to people what motivated the violence, what led to this tension between the two social classes, the Tutsis and the Hutus?
God, it's a long history. Yeah, it didn't, I mean, for us, genocide, we never went through it before 1994, so it was overnight. We felt like it was overnight, but it escalated from a long history, and the tension and the hatred, divisionism, really began way back in colonial era, in 1930s. That's when the Germans came in Rwanda. It was the first. That's when we were first colonialized. And you know what was happening in Europe in 1930s and 40s? There was the Holocaust going on. So I always say that we cannot give what we don't have. So what they had, that's what they give us. They changed the social classes that we had into tribes, and
you explain this so well in the book that tribes never existed prior to that.
No, it was social classes. If you were a Tutsi, you owned more than 10 cows, and there was the elite class and middle class was the Hutus. So you could really come from the Hutu class and go to the Tutsi class if you had more than 10 cows. But after they changed it into tribes, then you were stuck with whatever you were. If they measured your nose and your hands and whatever, they will classify you, they will categorize you in one particular tribe. So that's where the tension came from, and what they were learning behind that was the story that the Tutsis, they looked more European, so they might not be from Central East Africa. So they say they were from Ethiopia, and teaching that, it made the Hutus feel like, wait a minute, these people are not from here, and they are the elite. They're having everything in our own country. They should go back. So it really started just like that, the ownership, the entitlement, and then in 1950s, that's when we had the first civil war. They killed the king, and most of the Tutsis fled from Rwanda and to neighboring countries.
So
Congo.
300,000, is that correct?
Yeah, almost probably 500,000 people fled to Congo, Burundi, Uganda, and Tanzania. And then a few who stayed. In the book, I explain it a little bit more. They lived in fear. Yeah, they were not. At school they were treated really horribly. It was just. And some people actually changed their ID cards so that they would not be, if they looked a little bit more Hutu, they would change their ID cards. Then they would become Hutus. So, and then during the genocide, they were cut because their neighbors knew. So it was this,
You were almost 4 years old when the Rwandan genocide began,
Yeah.
and you were a member of the minority Tutsi community
Yes.
being slaughtered by Hutu extremists. And you share this memory of standing in a line, waiting to die, without totally understanding at such a young age that concept of death. But suddenly your life was spared by an old Hutu man who came out and said to the extremists, "Do not take her life because of your age, because you are so young." And I want to know, what was the process like for you to travel back to such a time in an effort to learn, to remember, to recount, to move forward and share this story with the world?
There was something. I have a very wonderful mom. She wasn't in Rwanda during the genocide, and when she came back, she was with RPF. And when she came back, my father had already traumatized because he lost his entire family. I had nightmares, and I didn't know really what happened to me. I couldn't put the pieces together of what happened to me. So she decided to take me back there. And that's how I was able to learn everything that happened to me, and it helped me now having a difference between a dream and a reality. Because I will wake up from those nightmares and I will think my whole entire family is being killed. And that helped me to heal, and when I grew older, then I became me. I realized sharing the story, knowing what happened to you, it helped me back then, and now even helps me now. Writing the book was the most beautiful thing I've ever done, but it was also the hardest thing to do, to go back and revisit everything and figuring out so many things I didn't even know that I still remember. And it was a long journey, but it was very important, healing, therapeutic. So even when I share my message to the world, I know it's also helping me. Yes.
It was interesting because you talk about when your mom did take you back, and you saw the wife of that man who saved your life, and how she came outside just in shock to see you.
She didn't know that I survived.
Yeah.
And she didn't know that I survived, and what made her happy was that her husband didn't know that I survived. So, I always feel gratitude towards this man. You know, he I don't know why he chose to save me from everyone else who was there. But just his heart. Yeah. His children were perpetrators. Yeah. It's something that he was used to, but he chose to save my life. And if he wasn't there, I wouldn't be here today. Yeah.
You talk about the PTSD that your father endured, and you talk about that very openly in the book. And as you just mentioned, just kind of going back and learning how to deal with this trauma. And it was interesting because you described, even after 100 days, when an estimated 800,000 to 1 million people were killed in this genocide and it ended, you said a silent war continued, and it was like this psychological war, an emotional war, and which was a taboo thing for you, really, to talk about at that time. How have you learned? What do you want people to learn from your story about talking about trauma and being okay with talking about PTSD, and getting the help that people might need? Yeah,
it's the understanding that when there's a surviving, it's not a choice to survive, but surviving after surviving, it's your choice, but it's also a choice for the society, the community. So being allowed to share what happened to you. In my country, nobody really knew what it is to survive genocide, because we never went through it. So it was also, if you had PTSD, you were considered crazy, and that's something you also keep in your family, so nobody knows about it. It's like a shame, and we suffered from it because it was silent, it was inside, and you would just go through it alone, now knowing that your neighbor is actually going through the same thing. So PTSD, it's not a shame, it's an illness, and if you have someone to talk to, it helps to let everything out. So that, for me, writing the book was more about the 100 days happened, but after the 100 days, it was a disaster. We had lost everything and everyone. So living a life after that, it was a new journey that we had to to take, and a lot of us didn't survive it. There were so many people like my dad, like just waking up in the morning, you don't have anyone there. It was hard, and even after years and years, that's people, because they were surviving throughout, after many years they were surviving. Now you graduate from college or high school, and you don't have anyone to celebrate that with. So that's what really gets to people, and then the trauma comes up after many, many years, because they have been surviving every single day that they hadn't had time to look back. Yeah.
You raise points in your book that people really, from all backgrounds, all religions, all ethnicities, and life experiences can connect with in some way. And we stopped by Monroe Community College prior to your arrival, and we met with student leaders of MCC's Human Rights Genocide and Holocaust Project. And they were in the process of getting their peers to take human rights pledges, and sharing a little bit more about you, your story.
Oh, wow.
And I want to go to a video clip, because I want you to hear what they had to say, just in terms of what they connected with when it comes to your story.
Oh, wow. Yes.
She's a young person who has been through unspeakable tragedy, and she takes that tragedy that she's been through and turns it into something good, turns it into positivity and love, and raises women's voices with her organization. That's something that we can all support.
She is very real about her struggles, and that you empathize with her, and you empathize with how she went through a hard time and she overcame it. That's really inspiring, and it's really touching to everyone. She had a very rough family situation, and I can relate to that, and I love that she can talk about it, she can be very real about it, and that she overcame it.
When we're talking about genocide, whether it's the Holocaust, Rwanda, Bosnia, you could go on, they all have the same blueprints. They all start with concrete red flags that we can see, and if we step in and speak out in enough time, we can prevent that from happening in the future. And so that's what we want students to really connect to, is you have the power to do something, even if it's something little, like spreading love.
One thing that I definitely want them to learn is how to stand up themselves, because she stands up and she fights for human rights, and she is very active in promoting peace, just promoting goodwill for everyone.
Didi, emotional for you to see that.
Yeah.
How does it feel? When you know that your story, I know what you set out to do, I think you're accomplishing those things, and you're getting people to share their own stories as well, and to connect with our world in a really special way.
God, I receive letters sometimes, and I cry on my own in my apartment. But now it's this helps me knowing that what I'm doing it's actually working, and it's not for nothing. And if I can touch one life, that life will touch other lives, and that's the same man who saved me, and now I can do this. I can reach as many people as possible, and I'm not perfect. I'm still human, and I do a lot of mistakes. But knowing that I can correct them, I can share my story and inspire someone somewhere to do good, and when they see evil and when they see hatred, they can stand up for that. They can stand up on that. It's an honor. It's a privilege for me that, and thank you for doing this.
There's so much that we can all learn from your story, and I know people are watching and they're thinking to themselves, how, in the aftermath of such tragedy, how is she able to cultivate this hopeful perspective on life and keep moving forward? And I think that you're showing us how to do that.
Well, I've been given a second chance to leave, so I'm not going to waste it. First of all, and. God, I think there's a reason why I'm alive, and I was born, and I want to do good in life, and I love seeing people happy. And I just want to see the world better than I found it when I arrived here. And I would do anything I can in my small power. I don't have a lot of power, but anything I can. It helps me wake up in the morning and be excited knowing that I'm not here for no reason. Yeah.
Didine Umenyana, thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Didine Umenyana launched Umbrella Press Inc. It's a platform for women around the world to share their stories and ensure their voices are heard. To learn more, go to Didine.com.